A lesson from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. You were dead through the trespasses and sins in which you once lived, following the course of this world, following the ruler of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work among those who are disobedient. All of us once lived among them in the passions of our flesh, following the desires of flesh and senses, and we were by nature children of wrath, like everyone else. But God, who is rich in mercy, out of the great love which he loved us, even when we were dead through our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up with him, and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that in the ages to come he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness towards us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. 'Tis the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are what he has made us, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand to be our way of life. In many and various ways God spoke to his people of old by the prophets.
But now in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son.
There are a few things going on in that lesson that we heard this evening. Some of them even kind of strange. What's happening at a certain level in this story is that St. Paul is making a description of how people understood the world at that period of time. There was present this kind of sense of what we would call a three-tiered universe, where there is heaven, earth, and the place under the earth. And that's sort of how we get our, at least colloquial sense, that when you die, you go up there or you go down there, one or the other. And at least since the time of Jesus, Christians have associated the idea of going up there as a good thing, because that is the realm of God, or the realm down there as the realm of the dead, or the realm of Hades, or even, may we say, hell. And if you're familiar with the circles that Dante draws in his Divine Comedy, there is that sense of descending deeper into hell or ascending higher into heaven, one of these sorts of things. And so that's kind of going on. That assumption is happening here in this story, and we all kind of casually understand it, right? I mean, we kind of casually know that the universe is not necessarily divided neatly into these sort of three tiers, where heaven is up there and hell is down there. But we still kind of think that way, right? We still kind of think that way. So let's assume for just a few moments, and we still kind of think that way. But there was a little bit more to that view of the universe than just that. There was this sense that the space that was the air was the realm of the evil one. And the air is what created this great gulf between heaven and earth. And you can find in other places in the scriptures, particularly in the New Testament, where it speaks of the evil one or Satan or the devil, whichever terms you want to use at particular moments, who is the prince of the air. What that's saying is that there is sort of this barrier that separates now heaven from earth. And it's occupied by the evil one, so you cannot get through that very easily. And part of what's going on in the stories in the New Testament is that it is Jesus who is the one who's able to broach this great chasm, this chasm that separates heaven from earth, by coming down through it and ascending back up through it. But even better than that is the great confession of the church and the stories that we read, particularly in Jesus' crucifixion, that not only does he broach the gap between heaven and earth, defeating the one who has control over that space, he also breaches the gap between earth and hell. Because in good Jewish thought, not only did the evil one control the space between heaven and earth, the evil one also controls the space between earth and hell. And yet, and this is what's being reflected in this story this evening, and yet in spite of that, God in Jesus shatters the realm, the evil one. That this power that separates heaven from earth, and this power that separates and keeps separate the realm of the dead, keeping it separate from the power of God, if you may, keeping it separate from all of the things that could transform it into something else, all of those things have been broken down by God. And that it was nothing, as the story goes on, it is nothing that we accomplished on our own that made the breakdown of the separation, but it was purely God's act to break these barriers down. That's what it's saying. That God, in God's own actions, breaks down these barriers that would separate heaven from earth, the realm of the dead from heaven. That somehow God is able and shows his own power to be able to transcend any of these things, shattering the power of the evil one. Now here's where the story gets really good. By the shattering of that power, St. Paul says, God invites us to participate in his world. That by the opening up of these places, God is inviting us to participate in his world. And that the chasm that exists between heaven and earth, and even that chasm that might exist between the realm of the dead and heaven, all of that is evaporating away. So if you may, the excuses that we have for why things are the way they are, the alibis that we create for why things are the way they are, the divisions that exist both visually in our world and at least psychologically in our world, that are created both by the presence of evil, but also by our own sense of disjunction between our separation from God and God's distance from us, all of those things are going away. Now, admittedly, St. Paul admittedly, the barriers are going away, but yet the one who created them is still there. He's saying it's just not like you're going to now have us walk and skip in the park this afternoon. That the one who created the problem, the prince of the air, as he says in tonight's lesson, the one who creates the problem, the one who creates the division, the one who creates the separation, the one who divides us from God is still there. But the division he made has been eradicated. Which means we now have the opportunity for a new choice. We now have the opportunity to live in a way that in Jesus, God creates the opportunity for a new life. And St. Paul's quick to want to point out to us that this isn't because we're clever, and it's not because we've been particularly good, and it's not because we're especially pious, and it's not because we've somehow done something to earn this, and it's not because
experiences that we had before have not gone away. That's the thing. And not because we've earned it, but just because God has done away with them. So what sits there is this very pregnant, if you may, very pregnant question. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's your life sitting there before you. The opportunity to live a life with no excuses. The opportunity to live a life that is full. An opportunity to live a life that has unimaginable possibilities. The opportunity to live and even die a life in reflection to God that is not separated in any way from God. That's what you have. And the pregnant question is this: what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You don't have to worry about the fact that you earned it. You don't have to worry about the fact that whether or not you deserve it. You don't have to worry about the fact that somehow you might not be good enough for it. You're God. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And that's the question that has sat there for Christians everywhere for nearly 2,000 years. So what are you going to do? And we've managed to cook up all sorts of stories, and we've cooked up all sorts of reasons why we can and we can't. We've cooked up all sorts of ways of explaining things, and we've cooked up all sorts of other alibis, even to the point of saying, well, nobody believes what we take or say more, la 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 la. Well, that makes sense. The story doesn't hang on that fact. The story hangs on the fact of there's this world, and you have a life. And the excuses that we would offer for not living that life fully, and even, this is the better part, and even dying in that life fully and completely for God. Completely God. Absolutely God. There's no reason why you can't be God's person in this world. No reason at all why you cannot reflect God's world back into the world in which you find yourself. No reason you have to give in to the evil one. No reason left at all. So how are you going to live? And what are you going to do? And what are you going to be? And how do you express your life, which has been given to you by none other than God? Opened up in this remarkable way. Opened up. I suppose for a long time, preachers and pastors have tried to define the exact way that works. But perhaps we've been wrong in the moments that we did that. And all we can do is suggest what that might look like. And all of those suggestions lead to something that looks like it is, however you would choose to reflect the glory of God in this world. It is nothing less than being the very reflection of everything you see in God being reflected back into this world. It means everything that you can even imagine in your dying to be a reflection back